This episode is brought to you by Audit Shield, the service that protects CPA firms when the CRA comes calling. Audit Shield ensures every hour you spend responding to audits or reviews is fully covered.
Welcome to our AJAG PD Pod, the place for discussion, debate, and learning about all things accounting. Our hosts, Ivan Tabak, Jonathan Tucker, are CPAs that have been in practice for more than 3 decades. Together, they bring varying experience and viewpoints to the table, not to mention a little humor, too. Join us as we talk through current issues and hot topics, tap into expert guest insights, and enjoy the odd walk down AJAG memory lane. Before we begin today's podcast, please note, although the educational material within the podcast has been carefully prepared, none of the persons involved in the preparation of the material accepts any legal responsibility for its contents or for any consequences arising from its use. As well, the podcast material and the references contained therein may reflect laws and practices that are subject to change. Advice regarding a particular fact or situation should always be reviewed by a qualified professional. This podcast is produced and distributed by AJAG Professional Development. For more information about AJAG or any of its offerings, please visit ajag.ca.
Welcome back to part 2 of our podcast with Anshul Kaushik. If you missed part 1, you can go back and watch it on YouTube or listen anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and so this is when people hear, they keep hearing every day, AI is going to change our accounting, the practice of accounting. People are trying to figure out what does that mean? And so I think what we've just talked about there in terms of identifying use cases is how people can kind of start to access this world.
Yes.
I know the larger firms, because I read about this, are now saying, all right, we want to move our bookkeepers from bookkeepers to managers, because now the bookkeeping function is now going to be AI generated. And now that bookkeeper is now going to be they call it a manager, but it's going to be looking at the data to say, all right, so is this accurate? Because we know AI is prone to error. So that means they need to understand the transaction so that they can spot something that's wrong. So that's another bookkeeping side is another use case of that.
Yeah, but we were talking about that earlier, right? I mean, you can, you go into QuickBooks and you download your transactions and it codes it based on
probability,
what it's seen, or what it's seen before.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But, you go to Best Buy and you have a receipt or you have a charge come through on your credit card, and it could be 4 different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. AI can't know that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of determinism. It's impossible to know that.
Yeah, and that's where AI is still a tool. It's not the ultimate. Right. That's why I say
you still have to have eyes on it.
Yeah.
And
so that's human in the loop, as we call it, right? It's human in the loop, meaning those so-called managers, what you just said, it's going to go back and say, oh, I discovered day 1, 60 mistakes.
Yeah.
Now, it shouldn't repeat those 60 mistakes.
Yeah.
You have to go and train, adjust, do these things. And now it's 30 mistakes.
Yeah.
It's a process that takes time, but it happens where you start to learn again, right? Again, you have to keep doing this. Now, here's something that, we were talking about use cases and the bookkeeping thing. Yes, AI is going to have a large impact, right? I think majority of the world is still trying to figure out the use cases, right? Because organizations themselves don't know the use cases.
Yeah.
And then this is something I wrote about very recently. I call it human nuance, right? Meaning there's something special about each human individual, and they do things in a certain way and type way. Now, I joke about this. When I first started in the sales career, I had a very different mindset. I came from a technical, data-driven mindset. Wasn't very popular when I started in sales. Sales was considered 80% art, maybe 20% something else.
Yeah.
And I remember in the first interview of my job, I said, no, I think sales is 80% science, 20% art. I remember the interview manager was very taken back by that. But that was my, let's call it that was my human nuance, right? Now there was a very well-defined process structure on the sales process.
Yeah.
And quietly, I chose not to follow it. I built my own process based on this methodology or this way of thinking that I had. And I succeeded. I started to succeed very quickly, very fast, very effectively, which helped me grow throughout my career. But you know what my manager always said? He followed the process. You know what happened? The enterprise still believes that the process that they taught me worked. But the process that I implied never got captured. However, the results that you're seeing are from what I call human nuance. I actually defined a term for this. I call it shadow work. Not in a negative sense, shadow work meaning you've been assigned a task, you need to get it done in X amount of time, and this is what's available. But you got to follow the process, right? How many people do you think do that? I mean, I know various colleagues, not just in my field, but other fields, that find ways to do things faster. They use their mind. You know, you need to get a budget approved from a CFO, or you know that this CFO is going to show up 7 o'clock to grab his copy. I go there. Can I get your approval? Say yes. Is that captured? No, it's not. It's not captured. So this is a weird little thing that isn't mapping out. As you said, for bookkeeping, bookkeepers might be doing something in a non-traditional sense that isn't translating for AI, because AI sees, hey, this is a very clear process. But we're not. What we've seen over the last little while, over the last 2 years, many organizations, and there's multiple studies you can read on this, and I'll give you an average, right, of all the studies. They say approximately 70% of the time AI initiatives are failing, right? So I was like, why are they failing? I'm a technologist by nature. They should be succeeding. Then I realized human nuance is not being captured as a process. It's just being captured as the process that is stated by the company, whether small or large, does not matter. You think as an owner or as a CEO that you've initiated this and it should work. And now when it looks like it's working, you accept that it's working. This has led to what I call a false positive, and which translates into failure. All right. So yes, there are firms that are doing this, and now we'll have to standardize. We'll have to look at the business in a standardized way, and this gives credibility to all the people that have been doing things. I'll call it the smart way, not the process way, the smart way. And now you need those people. What I call those people are domain expertise. AI does not have domain expertise. AI is a very large generalist. Doesn't matter how small, large the model is, it's just a generalist. The feedback loop needs to be domain expertise. A great bookkeeper, right, is domain expertise. Great accountant is domain expertise. Whether it's tax accounting, whether it's, global accounting, whatever, it's domain expertise. AI has not captured that. Organizations are now starting to understand that since we didn't capture this information, it is affecting the results of the output. So domain expertise hasn't gone. It is going to be, the next phase of this is the era of the domain expert. Not the generalist, the domain expert, because that needs to be captured, that needs to be trained, that needs to be taught. That is what will make AI better. Not just the fact that, hey, so that's where human in the loop comes in.
So where we'll see this type of thing finding its way out in our year-end process, for example, we'll have an Excel file which will have the general ledger in it, which will have all the transactions of the year. And AI's task will be find anything that looks suspicious. So that I don't have to scan a big GL, I can go through and it suggests to me, look at these transactions, these Amazon transactions, right? Because I've trained it, I've said to it at some point along the way, all right, here's what I need you to scan. And it can scan much faster than I can. But it's never going to replace me, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to say, yeah, but what about that one there? And what about that transaction there? Although I'm told the probabilities as a probabilistic is higher than human now. Like if you measure somebody looking at a general ledger and saying, okay, it's like spot the transactions where there could be an error in it. Human response is about 80 to 90%. AI is higher than 90%. I don't know why that is, but from what I've seen, that's the case.
The ability to capture more information and remember on a short term and short turnaround basis is better with AI. There's no doubt about that. But in what they call long context, meaning if I keep having multiple conversations and to reproduce the same results, it works on something called a context window, meaning how much information can I capture in this window? There is an actual limitation to that, right? So, and the tools that provide long context window are fairly expensive, very expensive, right? Most people are working on short context windows and so forth. So yes, on a short-term basis, grab this, see this, answer this, yeah, it's great. But if it's, let's say you said it was that 100-page document that you got from a lawyer, has everything, context window could just burn. Let's say the context window says, I can only handle, I'm translating this, right?
Is that because of cost? Is that because of
it's
limitation?
It's, ability. So till a month ago, the only company that came out with a, can hold a novel context window was Anthropic. It's called a million tokens context window, right? Before that, they were very small, 25,000, 30,000 tokens. This is, it's small. It's a couple of pages of PDFs and so forth, important, but it loses if you ask it more questions or it talks to another agent, it loses its ability to remember. So when you look at a workflow, I have multiple agents in that workflow doing X, Y, and Z, right? Research, react, and then output, right? 3 simple. If the context window of any of those agents is small, how much
going to affect the net?
Yeah, it's going to affect the net, and then it starts hallucinating. That's where you start to lose results. You're working in a very isolated environment when you're looking at like ChatGPT and Anthropic and doing these things. It's a little different, right? Versus when you try to apply it for your organization, that's where agent workflows, these things start to come out. The context window is very important, and it's actually one of the harder things to solve for. Because remember, this is not running once. You just said repetitive task, right? Is the context window clearing up in each repetitive task? Or is it containing that repetitive task again and again and again? So the window will burn, right? Like you have to define these things very clearly. Again, you have to go back to the process. This is define the process, understand the length of the workflow, how repetitive, how is it going to scale, how is it going to do these things. You have to map this out technologically very well for it to be highly effective at scale. Right? That's what we see. Yeah, short term, absolutely. Because you said something interesting. You saw this really great. Yes, it is great because every time you're asking it, it's a new context window. It's a new chat that you're opening up to do the same thing. It's trained on your behavior. It remembers your behavior. It does have memory. Now it knows that, hey, this is what he prefers. Yes, but every new window is new context. So it is giving you good results. Unless you're going to ask, if you keep going down that same context window, what you're going to see is it's going to slowly, steadily start to hallucinate. Does that help? Answer.
What are your thoughts? Do you see this in your day-to-day work?
Do I see it? No.
You don't?
No. My use is just using the odd question I'll throw into ChatGPT. Obviously no names, but I'll just put in a scenario or a question and get my answer. But I'm thinking, practically how could I use it? I mean, just on a very small scale. So take the example of a bank transaction write-up, right? So I'll have a bookkeeper and send her a pile of bank statements, and she'll go through, and if we don't have the download from the client, she'll just enter line by line in QuickBooks or on Excel spreadsheet or whatever. But if I scan 12 bank statements and I want to upload it into ChatGPT, and I say, okay, every time you see this type of coding on the bank statement, put it to this expense and this and this. Otherwise, use your best guess. Create an Excel spreadsheet with 20 columns, put the dates, and spit it out. I mean, is that something that I can do? Is that and then again, how do I protect the client?
So it's interesting you say that, and this has been our thesis at Ryzolv for a while, right? We've started to come around to this. Organizations such as yourself, or organizations that are in, very regulated, even non-regulated, let's call it, right? It's very clear that large language models start to overburden you. Like, it's very clear that they overburden you. What you're looking for is more on the, hey, I'm running this in-house, and I'm running a repetitive task, and I've defined everything. I've trained it my way. Very much like I did for the small model that writes in my Notion, right? Writes like me. What happens now? Do you know how long it takes me to write an article with this little small model? A minute. Right? I give it the idea. I say, hey, go do this. It writes it in my tonality every time. And I do this on it's a very regular practice for me, right? I do this on a continuous basis. So from that, I can clearly relate a security, skepticism, concern, right? Those are three things that I would see coming from people such as yourselves or organizations in such a manner. I see businesses going towards solver models for themselves. It doesn't matter whether they're small or how large. It depends on what the organization is and what they're doing. Is solver models for ourselves, trained, managed in our way, building output that we require. Because it's like, even if I take the two of you, there's probably a wealth of knowledge that you two have as individuals that might not even be repeated through your firms, right? Because, let's say you taught me how to do this a long time ago, and I joined your firm and I worked with you. I might not have the knowledge you do, right? But the ability to capture that knowledge, put it somewhere, and then train a model on that starts to become very effective, right? Please.
Can I bring it back to our whole process? Because this is what I've been thinking around AI. We've been used to, in our entire careers, using these tools. I don't think they're tools anymore, but tools like the QuickBooks or a tax software. Those tools are now inhibit us from doing our work, because we've been thinking that, okay, I've got to download within this context. If I'm using QuickBooks, I have to download into that. AI now says, you don't need to worry about a general ledger. I'll create that for you for each file. Just tell me what you want it to look like, and I'll create it. And then I say, well, okay, great. I've put in all my bank statements. This is where I see it going. We're not there yet, but this is where I see it going. I've put in 12 months of bank statements. I put in 12 months of credit card. The system's ingested this information, and now it's saying, okay, what do you want me to do with it? And I say, give me a general ledger. There's a debit and credit. I've defined that at the outset. Every file is going to be the same. So it goes through, it gives me my journals in a spreadsheet. It takes the totals at the bottom. At each step of the way, I can verify. And now it generates the general ledger. And I say, well, that's great, but I need that in financial statement format. So now it creates a financial statement. It creates my balance sheet and okay, that's great. But I also need the Giphy codes. So it now gives me an input. And then I run into a barrier. My barrier is the software that I used to use, that I still use. I have to pull that in now manually. So that's why I say these tools that we've used are actually getting in the way of what AI can do now. Because if I can define the output, again, it's repetitive task. Every file is going to be the same. But I still need to be able to look at that journal and say, okay, have you put, like you've said, okay, well, you put in 20 columns, but maybe it needed 22 because there's 2 other transactions that fall into that category. I still need to look at that. But it will process those transactions so much faster than I can.
But
they did 7,000 transactions. There's an example of where a guy put in 12 months of bank statements. There were 7,000 transactions. It took AI 7 minutes to process that and spit it out into an Excel spreadsheet. It was like,
yeah.
But I can only hope for that.
But security-wise, you basically need your in-house
Yeah, I mean,
system
we're talking to
do that.
organizations with regulated industry, right? Regularly, that's what you guys are. That's what your firms are.
And that's why Claude is not there right now.
Well, you would have to go sign up a lot of legal terms with Claude. You would have to battle them out to be like, hey, I need these specific.
But the other thing is that it's sitting in the U.S. Their servers are sitting in the
I
U.S.
think
not
that
here.
they have the ability now through Azure and AWS to put out an instance for you in these data centers.
Okay, talk a little bit about Azure and those data centers, because now we're getting into, if somebody's dabbling with this, then they're going to hear about Azure and what do those tools do?
So I'll give you a couple of answers for that. Before I go into the Azure and AWS answer, I'm going to answer something. You just raised a very interesting point with the example that you gave, right? It's doing this and this and this. And you said something about, hey, the tools that I've been using are now becoming a hindrance. You know what's funny about that? It's not just you. It's across the board, meaning small organizations, large organizations are saying that this is a challenge. And why do I need to step outside of this box when everything can be done in this realm or box, right? Why do I need XYZ tool? Why do I need this tool? And this is a question that now keeps coming up and up and up again. So
I'm not following. What
like
do
you said, QuickBooks, right?
Okay.
For example.
Yeah.
Right now I need to drag things out of QuickBooks, but it's doing all these stuff. It does all these things for me here, here, here.
Yeah.
Why do I need QuickBooks?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is a question that's coming up across small to large enterprises across the world. Yeah. Why do I need these tools when I can have this here?
Yeah.
It's a very relevant conversation, maybe another conversation, but a very relevant conversation. Now, as far as your AWS and Azure, so these are data centers, right? They have data centers in Canada. They have offerings. Yeah. So what they do is, it's Azure and AWS both offer the models hosted in Canada. Yeah. From that perspective, if you are signed up with one of them, and then they have their own privacy terms, right? That you have to negotiate, work through with them, whichever.
Can you do that?
Yes, absolutely. You have the right to do that.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because
I thought it was a master agreement. It's take it or leave it. There's our terms and conditions. It's 48 pages long in small print, and I either take it or I don't.
Well, you sign up for, let's say, a small enterprise, things like that. Hey, I need to do this. You go back, talk to your customer success manager, account manager, whoever it is. Do you have the right to do that? We did that, by the way. We went, and when we were originally started working with Claude, we said, I want to sign something called a ZDR, zero data retention, right? Meaning, even if I'm using it, like I use it from a team structure, right? We use it to do a bunch of things, not client things, but our things. And we said, I want a ZDR, zero data retention. We signed one with Anthropic, right? So it protects us from what we do legally speaking, right? It protects us from that perspective. Now you can go negotiate these master agreement terms, these terms on the right licensing format for AWS and Azure. You do have that right. That is afforded to you by law, right? So, but it's yours to push back on. Yeah. Right.
I just don't know how successful a little person's going to be up against it.
I think it's one of those fundamental human things. If everybody does it, it's going to be successful. If one person doesn't do it, it's not. You do have the right to do it. Yeah. Right. And so
I want to come back to you for a second on this and say, okay, how do I see this? To me, I for my business case, my interest in exploring this is going to directly impact the value of my practice. If I can turn out more files, take on more clients without having to hire more staff, if I can change their workload, the value of my practice is going to increase. On the other hand, somebody say, well, I don't really care about the value of my practice. I care about my lifestyle. I don't want to be working 80 hours during tax season. I just like to have a normal life and work 40 hours and know my work gets done. And so that's kind of the balance I see that this offers us. The thing I'm concerned about is that we're being so lured into this right now, and then a year from now, we're going to be hit with large fees. And now all of a sudden, it's like, well, I might as well hire a person because it's becoming so expensive to do AI. Is that a risk?
So what about the risk of the quality of your work? Because you're relying to a large extent on the output that this system is giving you. And yes, you're going to scan and you're going to do it. But if you sat yourself and did the transaction write-up, you're going to identify issues as they come across, line by line, right? That the system won't. And you're saying, you said you've asked it identify risk questionable transactions. Okay. Well, maybe it's just looking for large numbers or an oddball caption. But with the knowledge that you've got of the client and the history, it might be something that looks perfectly average, but that could flag
The only thing I'd say about
an
that
issue. So there's pros and cons to this whole thing.
I think if you think of AI as a person, as a staff person, and instead of it being a staff, because the bookkeeper you referred to, you're relying on the ability of that bookkeeper to interpret the information that you're putting in front of them. So so you're constantly saying to that bookkeeper, the real person, hey, you remember I told you, don't put it in that category, put it in this one. Or you know what, if you see an Amazon or if you see Amazon, ask for the actual invoice, because it could be a gazillion things. Well, you're doing the same thing with AI. You're not just setting it and saying, okay, there you go, you're done. No, you're constantly going back to it and say, no, when you encounter this, I want your response to be this, just in the same way you would do with a person.
I agree.
Yeah.
But my gut feeling says that the more that gets used, the more you're going to rely on it, and the less you're going to pay attention to
no,
it.
fair enough. I think
going, as you get used to it, as you get comfortable with that process, the personal touch is going to disappear.
Your involvement, you're going to be further involved.
Your involvement of that client and those transactions, and maybe picking something out that's a problem. You're going to feel more comfortable with the process, and you're going to gloss over it.
And I think that's where that nuance term you used.
Human nuance.
Human nuance. Your human nuance is, no, I want to see more of it. My human nuance is maybe, okay, well, we've done this 50 times and I've given you input, and it's like, I think I can rely on it. I'm still going to scan it, but it will start to.
And where,
where
how do you balance that?
It's a concept of,
and what's the risk?
100%.
It's concept of shifting trust. Right? In his case, Evan's case,
I don't trust.
You see, he's got a lot of skepticism. I have less skepticism.
Absolutely.
That's my style. That's your style.
So
right?
These are actual nuances, as you said, from the both of you. Right? So it's, and I mean, I'm also picking up on something, being in sales, coming from sales, me having relationships, right? We as human beings require relationships. What I pick up from you, Ivan, very clearly, is that you feel that there's a loss of relationship with the client because you're just giving them something, quote unquote, generic, right? You, on the other hand, you're valuing relationship in a different way. These people I'm going to have relationships with more intertwined. These people, it's day-to-day business.
It's goodwill.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, called goodwill, right?
Goodwill, financial goodwill.
Well,
because you want to build
here's
volume.
True. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But I'm also, because of use of AI, I'm on the other end of the spectrum on this from maybe where you are. I have actually seen my relationship with my clients improve, because now, like, I was not the speediest person to respond to emails, because it would take me time to capture my thoughts. You're very fast. You're always on top. You're good. But now a lot of the time I can capture that with AI. But not only that, I give them more information. And so now my client's coming back, hey, thanks for that detailed response. I'm not sure I would have thought of all of the things that it's included in there, but at least I can look at it before I hit send and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to leave that in. And oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. Or no, I wouldn't word it that way. No, pull that out. But now the quality of my response to clients, I feel like they're willing to cut me a little bit of slack if it's a little bit slower, but they're going to get a better quality response. And that's what I'm noticing. Listen, you sent me a question the other day. What about this issue? And I sent you back something in minutes out of that tax research. I mean, you would have called how many people to maybe get a fraction of that, which you had in a few minutes. And it answered all your questions, right? I mean, it was like, okay, now your question back to me is, yeah, but is it right? And that's a fair question. Is it right? I sure hope so.
Yeah.
But that's where there's a trust aspect.
Yeah, so it's shifting trust is what I would call it. It is a very little concept in this, because now you're trusting AI, or you're trusting yourself, or people around you.
So one of the questions that I ask when I'm asking this is, what is the source of your response? I want to see where you got that from, because if it comes from CRA, for example, all right, I have high level of trust. You've gone to the right source, and that you are interpreting it. But if it's coming from a tax preparer service, it's like, okay, I'm going to discount that completely. But that is one of my prompts. Where are you getting your information from?
So it's very interesting you say that. And just this week, I released an article on, like I said, I have a security background. On the fundamentals of trust. So again, this is a very large topic, but fundamentals of trust are changing, right? And we have to be very mindful and respectful. Like you said in the prompt, very clear. You have a prompt strategy. You write a good prompt saying, please verify the source. Yeah. Right? Great. That's the right way to go about it. Right? So at least you know that, hey, this is the CRA. Yeah. But let me give you a very weird scenario. And we're seeing this in the industry. Yeah. If I want to change your trust, now I copy the CRA's information. I create 1,000 websites on it, and I populate Google or all the other websites on it, and I write new information.
And attribute it to
the CRA. Yeah. Guess what's going to happen? Yeah. The AI will say, because AI picks on, search engines work on something called search engine optimization. Yeah. Very common. AI works on answer engine optimization, meaning question, answer, question, answered. You asked a question, you get an answer, right? So forth. And they look for that on the websites, and people are trained to do this now. I've just shifted and eroded trust. I shifted trust because now I have 1,000 websites that give you misinformation, but verified as actual information. And it's going down a very different path. I've changed your trust model, right? I have genuinely changed your trust model. Again, we're seeing this at a very large scope, not very small, very different topic, but the framework of trust is changing, right? And it's very interesting to have this conversation with both of you, because I clearly see that you're approaching it from two different angles, right? And this is good. This is actually great, right? But you kind of both want the same thing at the end of the day, right? Like I'll say it. You want efficiency, you want relationships, and you want growth, right? That's if I summed it down between what you said.
Well, I don't want to say you want growth, because that's my objective. But so for people watching, everybody will have their switches to this, right?
Yeah. So
it might be, no, I don't want to work as much. Yeah. Okay, so is there a way we can use this technology?
But that's growth, right? Growth doesn't mean revenue.
I see.
Right?
I see. Okay.
Very clearly, growth is, like I said, let's go back to the human nuance. I see efficiency, growth, relationships. These are the topics that I've picked up when I'm having the conversation just with the two of you. Yeah. Right. And growth doesn't necessarily mean revenue. Growth means I want to spend more time with my family, right? But I want the business to be steady, or I want growth in clients. I want growth in, I want to be able to help my clients faster. Very clear case. And we were talking about this. I've had 2 accountants in the course of my life, right? Yeah. A previous accountant over the last 3 years retired. Very frantic time when you have to get a new accountant. Yeah. And fortunately found a very good one, right? Who's embracing this AI. And I went up to him and I said, hey, what if I embed AI for you and I do this for you? And he had the same conversations, right? Very similar conversations. Yeah. Well, can I trust it to do these things? I was like, you can't trust ChatGPT to do these things because, but I said, I can set up something for you that you can. Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, that's amazing, because if you can set it up in-house and I can do this and I can reduce the workload on my team at this moment in time, because he's like, I'm going home at 12 o'clock at night. I was starting 9 a.m. in the morning. I'm going home and I can, and one of my complaints to him was, hey, it's so hard to get a hold of you during this time, but taxes are due. Yeah. And he was able to we have a good relationship. He was able to book me at like 8 p.m. April 30th to my taxes. And he did them in front of me. Very gracious of him, right? He did them in front of me, got everything submitted. We checked everything. But like, think of me as a client, right? I'm frantic at that point in time. I missed the deadline. There's some penalties coming, whether I like it or not, right? Because I can't schedule something with him. It's so hard. Like, and it's not like I called the day before. Called 2.5 weeks before to get this appointment. Right? If I like just that small sentiment.
A lot of thoughts go through my head right now as I listen to that. So you called him 2.5 weeks.
But you don't want to say this in case he's listening.
It's true. That's true.
They're all busy, right? Like I get it. Like it depends.
But I mean, you understand it. I mean, we're all
we're all in that same boat.
I mean, it's our warning clients, 2-3 weeks ahead. You don't get it to me, but
we give a date, April 6th this year. It's like, you don't get it to me by then we'll do our best.
Yeah, you can understand
it. Yeah.
But well, but here's the thing. That also means that some clients are terrible like me, right? Who are busy doing their own thing and getting it to you last minute. Like it or not. I don't blame it on him. Partially it's my fault because, hey, I got struck with so much on my plate and then I got this off. But here's the thing. Let's just change that little sentiment around. What if the deadline wasn't April 6th? It was April 28th now, as in for you guys. Right? Get it to me anytime before April 28th and we're good to go. I will have it for you. In the future coming world, you will be able to do this very clearly. At a very effective, hopefully trustworthy, and meaningful path. Right?
The other thing I worry about about that is that now you're going to get it to me on April 29th.
Of course, that's human nature, right? That's very human nature. Someone like me, absolutely, absolutely.
For people, just as we wrap up, for people that may be dipping their foot or their toe in this water, and over the next year, where should people go? Where should people start? Besides, you've talked about your LinkedIn posts and things like that, but where does somebody go to actually start to understand this world and start thinking about how they could access it in either small ways or broader ways? What would you suggest?
So, the most basic path is literally starting with one of these chatbots, right? Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT, and literally saying, hey, describe yourself. This is the type of learner I am. Can you create a learning path for me to learn these things for my business? Very simple prompt, very simple. And it'll give you a path. They're actually quite good at this. They give you learning paths, right? And it'll give you links to, hey, watch this podcast or watch this video, or here's a free training. And it sets up based on how you want to.
You're saying this in ChatGPT, for example?
Yeah, so I do this. So when I had to go and explain to people what are LLMs, right? In my head, I know this, but doesn't mean that someone, when I speak my language, will understand it. So I did this I have Gemini, all right? Gemini has this really nice feature called learning paths. So I ticked it on. It's a generative tool. It creates learning paths. And I said, hey, I need you to create a learning path for me to explain this to other people because I'm talking tech and they're not understanding English, right? Very simply. And it took me through, literally, it was a train ride. It took me through some basic courses on how to help me do this, right? I read through it on the train. I went through everything, and I was like, okay, that's great. It started my journey on translating tech to English.
Did they understand it when you explained?
Yeah, I mean, I hope you understood it today because it was part of that journey, right? It started that journey on learning how to explain these things to other people who don't understand it, right? Like a simple, this entire simple statement is, Gemini told me, hey, I'm probabilistic, not deterministic. In your field, you're looking for determinism. It might not be the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So that was a very big statement. I'm probabilistic, not deterministic. It told me that. Right? It's really about asking those right questions. I want to learn this. I want to learn how to do this. No time like today that you can learn so many things now in such a clear cut and fast fashion that hasn't been available and tailored to you, I would say that's the best right way. Ask one of these to create a learning path for you based on how you choose to learn. I'm a visual learner, right? So I like to watch a lot of videos or listen to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not read,
Yeah.
visual. So I told it my preferences, and it created links, paths in the right order to do those. Yeah. I think that's one of the best ways to do it.
You know, you talk about learning styles, and with that, because our time is running out, but you know, I am a visual learner as well. I'm not a reader. Typically, I struggle to read. I always have. Now I turn content into Audible so that I can listen to it. Yeah. Because that's how I learn. Right. So, all right, explain or tell me this article, because it's a long article and I'll lose my focus on it. And now I hear. So, you know, we can access this world. There isn't like one defined end game that everybody must, you know, your approach to this is your interest areas. My approach to this is based on my interest areas. And so we can use this as much or as little as we want. I think what we're trying to say to people is here's some risks that you need to be aware of. You start to think as this world opens up to us as professionals, what do we need to be mindful of? What are the legal risks, the professional risks that we have? And so I think that's part of what as we approach this, as we try to understand how this is impacting us every day. Right?
Agree.
Yeah,
absolutely agree. Well, I mean, we could keep going on there, and you know, maybe you come back and we can take this to the next level, because there's so much more to learn and discuss. Thanks for joining us for our 4th episode of the year. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and took away some insights you can apply in supporting your clients. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow the podcast wherever you listen so you don't miss what's coming next. And for expert-led PD courses, additional resources, and AJAG updates, head over to ajag.ca and join our email list. Thanks again, Anshul, for being here.
Thank you.
Doing great, and we'll see you next time.
Good to see you again, Jason. How you been?
Excellent, Jonathan. How about you?
Good. Today's topic was around AI. And for most of us in accounting firms, AI right now is around Copilot, ChatGPT, things like that. But from a CRA perspective, how are you seeing through Audit Shield AI affecting what CRA is doing and how that's impacting us on the firm end of things?
Yeah, and you know, we're talking about AI readiness within the firm. That's the topic of discussion, but I think it's very important that we don't overlook just how the CRA has shifted their reliance on, you know, automation, data analytics, and of course these AI-assisted compliance activity. I mean, the fact that they're reoriented to an extent in how they're conducting their reviews. Look, there's numerous mentions of their commitment to making these adjustments. It's already happening, as we know. Yeah. On their website. Let me give you a couple of examples, just a couple of articles recently laid up there on the site. There's one about the CRA's department plan to enhance, let me say that again. The department plan to enhance its use of AI tools to detect non-compliance. AI and processes automation will be leveraged. That's a direct statement. And then, of course, the Government of Canada's 2025 and 2027 AI strategy confirms that federal departments are expected to expand their operational usage of AI tools.
Yes. Well, I can tell you from our practice, we've noticed a marked increase with, like it would normally have been, you know, June, July, we would start to see it. I think the first week of May, we had probably 4 inquiries, like straight away. It was like, and a couple of them were GST related and things like that. But it's like, wow, that's fast. Are we on their hit list or something, or is this just the reality?
It's the misconception. It is absolutely not personal. It is profile driven. It is pattern driven. And you hit on something interesting too. You're definitely going to be seeing more of them, and this is most likely because of the usage of, again, the AI systematizing of the reviews, basically automation at scale through the use of these tools. Like you mentioned an increase. We take a look at our year-over-year claims activity on a monthly basis. And what stood out to us this year in April was that we saw about a 350% increase in T1 T1 post-assessment reviews. Now, not a shock.
350%.
Yeah, 350% increase, but not a shock that there is an increase because the CRA did mention as of April 10th that they are going to be conducting reviews year-round.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you'd be thinking to yourself, well, why is that?
Was there anything in that announcement, by the way? Because you mentioned April 10th. I'm sure a lot of people watching today didn't even see that announcement.
Yeah.
What was in the announcement?
So that was shared with me by my claims manager. I find more detail for you on that. But what stood out to us on that note that we received was, well, how are they able to do this if they have an increased capacity? Well, back to the topic at hand is definitely through the usage of AI tools, technology for sure, and using this automation at scale. Yeah.
So how should firms think about this as being AI ready? If CRA is on that end, what are your suggestions or what are your observations about this?
Well, I mean, think historically, CRA interaction was something more event-driven, right? I think what we're seeing, certainly the firms that are more progressive-oriented, thinking, about how to be prepared for what is happening now and the increasing inevitability of the use of these tools, is that you have to recognize that this is part of the new normal, right? Yeah. The way the CRA is conducting reviews is much more pattern and profile driven. Let me give you a couple of examples that you're probably familiar with. We know that the typical markers are, your expected ratios, your industry benchmarks, filing consistency, payroll patterns, so on and so forth, okay, that may trigger a review. So imagine all of these markers are now systematized through the use of technology, which naturally deliver a lot more touch points on the end, on the other side with the firm, right? And it's also the simultaneous nature in which these reviews are being conducted. So you could be working on a T1 processing review or, on foreign non-business tax, GST, HST, questions, trust, you name it. But it's the simultaneous nature in which these reviews are now being delivered to the firm.
Yeah. And you were saying before we got started on the video here that now these reviews are continuing throughout the year. We shouldn't just be expecting them in the summer, early fall, which is the time period that we tend
to see an increase in processing T1 post-assessment reviews from August all the way through to the end of the year. Now what the CRA has said, I believe this is on their website as well, that you can expect these reviews to occur year-round, right? In conjunction with everything else that's on the go too, right?
From our perspective as a firm, one of the things that we're paying far more attention to now is in the tax software we're using. We're always going back to the what we call comp screens. We use comp 5 or comp 2, which means the 2-year comparable or 5-year comparable.
It's a good idea.
And we will look at the T1 at a high level for income items, and then even drill down into the 21-25 form. There's a comp 5 for that, and it'll show you, okay, is there any change here in terms of how we've allocated things on that schedule that's going to attract their attention? Are we using any of those other fields where it doesn't fit into that category? Because those are the types of things that, so we want consistency in reporting, right? And if you have a changeover in staff from one year to another, then the only way you can really control that is to send that person back and say, look at the last couple of years tax returns. That's right. For consistency, right?
And I mean, just to expand a little on that point, I think what we're talking about here is the necessity to really look inwardly about, because there is this potential for added workflow pressure. So what you want to be doing is finding a way to increase the efficiencies on an operational level. And we're seeing a lot of that with the firms that have sort of accepted this as the new normal.
For us, for T1s, one of the things that we've done is kind of standardized how we ask clients to provide us with information now, because in the past, somebody might send in their spreadsheet and it's horrible, and somebody else sends in a spreadsheet and it's beautiful, but there's no consistency. Now we're sending it back to clients saying, no, this is how it needs to look. And we've done that because we want to be able to have an audit function. So when CRA says we want this information, we can just select on our spreadsheet and pull out those items. So that operationally, this is how we're starting to think. We're going to get a lot more inquiries here. But, from Audit Shield's perspective now, Tell us how that's impacting things.
So, what we're seeing a lot of it, I thought this would be helpful with you, is that if we're talking about the adaptation of, to an environment where compliance systems themselves are becoming more automated due to the scalability of it all, you want to be thinking about how you can be prepared for that. So we look at the firms that we're working with, and we have about 5 things, items that tend to dictate how well a firm is prepared in the event of a CRA review. Here's the 5 things that sort of stand out to us. Let me share this with you. There's our normalize, identify, document, decide, and process. What I mean by normalize, that's where you've got to let your clients know that, look, CRA reviews are part of the new normal. You've got your death, your taxes, and guess what? The third guarantee in life is now you're maybe likely to be audited. It's nothing against you. It's anything that we did. It's just the way that things are scaled now.
It's the rollout of technologies like AI.
That's right. The next one, identify high-risk profiles, those that are likely or at a higher likelihood to be reviewed. So, that means making sure that you have the documentation and to be prepared for that. To that point, documentation, like you want to document everything with a CRA review in mind, and keep these records, make them available. When it happens, the next one we have here is decide in advance how the CRA time is treated within the firm, and how you communicate that with your clients. Final point, obviously, is process around the unplanned, right? So it's, as we say, part of the new normal, part of the workflow. If you anticipate, you're going to be fine. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the reason why Audit Shield works well in a situation like this is because you do the work as you normally would in the event of a review, audit, or investigation. And instead of submitting the bill to your client, you submit it to us, and we get you paid generally within 2 to 3 days of having received the finalization letter. So peace of mind for your client and peace of mind for you, knowing that your professional time is covered.
Well, I think more and more firms are forced just by the volume of this to look at Audit Shield or they're going to look to their clients to get their time recovered, and clients need to be educated on this.
Right.
It's not a reflection on the CPA doing the return. This is just the new reality.
Well, and more, the firms that we work with, they make their clients aware up front, whether it's in an engagement letter or what have you, that because there is this increase in CRA activity, our job to defend the position it's incremental work, right? So oftentimes it doesn't matter if the filing position hasn't changed. It's still that incremental professional time that does need to be recovered.
I'm just thinking of that stat of 350%.
I think we're going to start seeing this across the CPAR area reviews. GST, HST is something that we've been seeing consistently throughout the year. But imagine that. Imagine you've got your T1s, your T2s, your trusts, and so on, all increasing and being consistent throughout the year. Stands to reason that an operational workflow, an adjustment towards these AI tools is in order.
And for those that might have that are firms of Audit Shield, and for those that haven't, this might be an opportunity just to go back, just to point out, pieces like that release from CRA saying, these things are going to continue to as part of our rollout, and also the government statement that they were looking for fines and penalties as almost a line item on their budget. That's right. So this is the new reality. So really practical perspective on this. Thanks, Jason, for coming and giving us that. And AI isn't only about adapting new tools. It's also about preparing for where external compliance systems are becoming increasingly automated and data-driven. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and if I can just make one last point. In this age of AI and automation, I would argue that the relationship between the CPA and their client is more important than ever. Because it can be confusing to have to navigate automation and frustrating. Right? Your clients are still going to need interpretation, reassurance. They're going to need a strategy. They're going to need a trusted advisor. So I would say that working with a CPA and navigating these tools is probably more important than ever.
Yeah, I think for those that recognize that, I think that's a really
For those that recognize.
I think that's a really important thing, because the temptation is to hide behind emails and lose those relationships, right, with clients. So anyway, well, thanks for joining us again. Always interesting, always practical.
Absolutely.
All right, take care. Thanks, everyone.